allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have the roll call?
Councilmember Bach?
Here.
Councilmember Stimmel?
Here.
Councilmember Williams?
Present.
Councilmember Servany? Here. Mayor Burton?
Here. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there's no request for items to be removed from the consent agenda, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next are council staff reports and announcements. I just have one announcement this evening, or one comment that I would like to share. I just want to thank the Center's American Legion Post 189 for putting up the flags on the bridge yesterday in remembrance of 9/11. I was happy to see the flags, and I think it's important that we all remember that day, and we also need to remember that we still have thousands of troops deployed around the world to protect us from that type of event ever happening again. And I would just also like to remind everybody, when we see our firefighters and police officers and all the first responders, that we thank them for their service, and it's comforting to know that they're there if anything like that should ever happen again, God forbid. So that's the only comment I have this evening. I'm going to ask for Councilmember Balf.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One comment, I just would like to recognize our city engineer, Tony Cooper, for the fabulous work he's doing on staying on top of the construction out there at the roundabout. It's really moving along, and I know he's working very hard on that, and it shows, too. So, thank you.
I have to give credit to the contractor, but thank you.
Great. I think we all feel the same way. So, yeah, thank you for that. Councilmember Stimmel.
Oh, thank you. Just one thing, it just came from Holly Park. The baseball kids got out of practice, but the soccer folks did not. My daughter down there and a little kid. In a few weeks, month or so, it's going to be a soupy mess down there, muddy until pretty much next summer. Just thankful that we're pursuing the drainage there. I think that's awesome. What a good thing.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to second that motion for Tony. The project's running really well. I noticed, I went through it right after the detour changed. I mean, within minutes. I was probably within the first 10 cars. I went through it a couple of times, and contractors did just a stellar job. I also noticed the next morning that my Waze traffic guidance system, which is part of Google, had already reprogrammed it for the new route. So somebody caught it. The old detour was kind of buggy going around behind the casinos, but you know, the new one worked really well. So doing a great job out there. I saw a permit load come through today that was having a little trouble in there. They had to stop all the traffic.
Yeah, that, unfortunately, right now, it's construction detour, and so traffic won't be going that way. In the future, we're going the opposite way with the rest of the traffic, so it will be much different once it's done.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was southbound or whatever, coming from Woodland direction as permit load, and they had to stop things for him to crawl around in there. So I've seen we got a little bit of abuse on it already.
There is, and the contractor's working, so we're trying to keep on it.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's looking good. Yeah. Great. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Servany.
I would just like to bring up once again a reminder about the Senior Connections Wellness Expo. It's this Saturday at the ALNA Convention Center, and generally completely filled with vendors and booths, so take your friends up there for a great Saturday, gather up all the freebies, and find out what opportunities exist throughout Clark County for you to get involved, especially our newcomers as well. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are staff reports. So we have two reports this evening. First one is from Chief Denny.
Attorney's report?
Oh, yep, thank you. Well, staff too, but we'll let the attorney go first then. Thanks, Chief.
I have to come up with something. The briefing in the appeal, Court of Appeals, I think I provided you the stack of briefs from all the petitioners. The FutureWise, their brief is not due yet, but they have filed and been granted a motion to file an over-length brief. They're going up to 90 pages. So that's where that is. And I think we had anything else. We did have the hearing on compliance that we do every 6 months with the Growth Management Hearings Board. They have not issued an order yet. The oral argument did not seem to go the way we would have liked, but it didn't last time either. The Growth Management Hearings Board is still, we follow these statutes, and that the county has improperly de-designated the land around these cities, including the center's junction. So that will get attached to the appeal as well. It's at the Court of Appeals now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city attorney? Okay, now chief.
Okay. Mayor, council, citizens of the center, Chief Daniel, the Center Police Department. Kind of a light monthly advisory report, but nonetheless, school's back in session. We haven't had any major issues. There has been some variances in how the schools, at least the middle and the elementary school, is actually directing traffic. So we just want to remind everybody that the school speed limit is 20 miles an hour speed zone through there. We've been having, of course, we'll always have issues with speeders coming through the school zones, morning and evenings as well. But because of the dip there at Stone Creek, they kind of fly through there a little bit quicker than they should. So also a reminder of no texting when driving, no keeping your hand in your phone while you're talking and all that good stuff. You're not supposed to do that anymore, so just to let everybody know. Also, there's no longer a left-hand turn westbound on 4th Street into the middle school, elementary school there. We've been having quite a few violators because they just don't know. But the school has put out a lot of directives to the parents and guardians to remind them that there has been a change in the traffic pattern, and please come into the second drive, which is on the east side versus the west. And so we're making some progress there. It's a learning here. So we'll teach everybody, and then we'll start issuing citations if we have to, because there's a lot of people I talk to when I stop them, and we haven't seen this sign. Well, you're supposed to be paying attention to see this sign, so that's not an excuse. Let's see, speeding on the center road across the bridge. We've had a lot of complaints about speeding vehicles across the bridge, and one of the issues we do have is as people are leaving town, they think that because they see the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit sign at the end of the bridge that they can start speeding up before they get to the sign. So we're trying to get that resolved, but in the interim, it's 25 across the bridge in both directions, and until you get to the signs, please stay at 25. Let's see, what else is going on here? We're attempting to hire a police officer currently. We are in the process of hiring an intermediate/lateral officer to fill one of our vacancies, and we have several others, new hire packets in the process of being screened and trying to see if we can make some progress in that. It's been a long, arduous process because it's just trying to get qualified applicants on board, and of course with the academy being so far out, it's hard to hire and anticipate those types of things. So we're making headway though. And then on the next page is basically the stats for August. Nothing too alarming, but as you can see by the pie chart there, what's going on in the center. So if you have any questions about that, I can answer. I know a couple of those, as was pointed out by Councilman Clough, that they're not well marked. But if you had the electronic version, you can hover over those and actually have what they are. The orange, the green, and the purple there is a little misleading. So, but those are miscellaneous calls for service. One of them was traffic-related incidents, and the other one was, I can't remember what I told you that we were going to
Can't either.
But nothing significant, so. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a report from our city engineer, Mr. Tony Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. First I'm going to talk about just some of the infrastructure projects. Obviously, everybody can see what's going on with the roundabout. The contractor anticipates they are going to start placing curb and gutter sometime next week on the east side. They're working on utilities right now. There's some fire hydrants, some storm drain catch basins that have to be placed, and then they're going to start working on the curb and gutter. And then they're actually going to start forming for the concrete pavement. And then they'll also work at the center of the roundabout and do some fill and start filling the inside of that centerpiece. And then they anticipate probably about 2 to 3 weeks, they're going to put in place the concrete pavement, and then by beginning or middle of October, paving. So they anticipate they're going to be done sometime mid to end of October. Substantial completion. They probably have a lot of work to do. There, you can see that there's forms going in right now on that barrier wall. They're planning on pouring half of that Friday, and then next week they'll form for the rest of it. So it's probably going way ahead of schedule, but you kind of have to wait and see what happens with the weather because it may slow it down a little bit. The grade's getting kind of soft, and so they're trying to do as little work as they can while it's wet. Let's see, LED light conversion project, it's all complete. We're just waiting on reimbursement from TIB and from Clark County as part of the FLIP program. The community reader board, Jeremy and I are working on getting some specifications and putting together some bid package for that. We got a quote, or he got a quote from a contractor. 2 options. One is 20 to 25,000, but that's one contractor. The problem is that we have to actually go out to bid with this because it's large enough where we have to allow other contractors to bid the project. So we'll have to put together a bid package to actually do that. So it'll be a coordination of getting the right specifications and how to construct it, and then bidding that project. The rest of it, they're kind of updates from our office. Talks about residential construction, Riverside Estates. They're doing some general grading out there right now. They had some stormwater issues over yesterday, but they're trying to deal with those. And the Department of Ecology has been involved with that too. Case subdivisions, they're continuing to build building permits. There's a lot going on up there. Case subdivision, there's only a couple. Heritage Country there's several permits that have been issued, and there's a lot going on up there. Woodhill Estates, they've received final plat approval. We haven't received any permits yet on that, but that will start happening here probably pretty soon. Let's see, sewer updates. Some of this is from the wastewater treatment plant operator. Been talking about the NPS permit, and plant continues to operate under, within permit levels. They're working on outfall repair, and I think they had some divers do some outfall repair there in the last week or so, and I think they're working on that. Collection system, they're conducting quarterly cleanings, some sewer lift station, standard stuff they do. The operations crew, they've been working on crack sealing for the past couple weeks, and I think they're going to do that, weather permitting. Bridge lights, since the bridge lights, they had some issues with vandalism there. Moffett Electric has been repairing the street lights, or has repaired the street lights, and Jeremy's been working with them on that. The trail, John Pollock Water Trail Park sign. They picked up the sign, and they're going to incorporate the old timber salvage. There's been some timbers that they salvaged that they're going to use to kind of put that together. Heritage Park project, again, this is just continued work that they're doing, that our operations crew is doing. Heritage Park routine maintenance parts, and then totem pole. It's been cleaned, and I think a retired center art teacher has agreed to do the work. So those are just some of the things going on. Any questions on any of it? You can see the detour plans up there. I just want to kind of make people aware that the way the detour is now is really southbound, is the opposite direction that they will be traveling. And so there's traffic, because it's a center line, they're actually a center line between different ways of travel. People tend to shy off a little bit. And so the final configuration, there'll be more room for people to actually turn, to turn north along there and continue on Pacific Highway and then turn right. So it'll be different, and then southbound will be able to continue south on Pacific Highway, and it'll be pretty much straight, but they have to go around the roundabout. But it'll be easier to maneuver for vehicles in the future.
Tony, you said the LED light conversion was done.
Yes.
Did 18th Street get taken care of?
18th Street.
From Aspen, those big orange lights, those globe ones?
I have to look, because I'm not sure if I have to look and see if that was on one of the ones that they repaired.
There was one that was on all the time up there, but Naomi said that those were city
On 8th
lights.
Street, those are the ones that CPU has been doing on their own, so I'll have to check and see.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure where they are with that, but the LED light conversion, which is the Relight project, that's just for the city lights that aren't being maintained or as part of the Homeowners Association. So those ones, CPU is upgrading all those with
Okay.
LEDs, and I just don't know, I'll have to ask them.
Okay, I didn't know why,
Yeah.
the fact that CPU, then I
Yeah.
understand why it's late.
That's right, yeah, they work on a kind of, they on a schedule.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
know where they are with that, but I'll have to find out.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Any
Great.
questions?
Very good. Thank you, Tony. Next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. If anybody would like to address the council, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes. And this is only for things that are not on the agenda. So if somebody's here and wants to make comments about the latecomers agreement, there will be an opportunity to address the council on that a little bit later in the meeting. So this is just for items that are not on the agenda.
There, the left.
Okay, seeing nobody stepping up to the microphone, we'll go ahead and continue moving on. We do have a resolution this evening that the city council is going to discuss. It's resolution 18-438. That's supporting the I-5 bridge replacement. I'm going to open it up to the council for discussion. The city council did have a work session on this on September 4th. We did have a representative from RTC that came and did a presentation to the council. And with that, I will turn it over to the council for any discussion or what action they care to take.
I'd like to start off with a few comments, if I may.
Sure, please.
It was a very informative work session that we had. It was a representative from Southwest Washington Regional Transportation Council. Good information was presented. A strong argument was presented for replacement of the I-5 bridge. And I think the consensus was it's hard to disagree with the information that we had, because it is an old bridge. But I'm going to offer my opinion. I think the issues that we have regarding the commerce and transportation over that bridge are much greater than just the bridge. The issues that we have there, in my opinion, go up and down the I-5. They go down the whole corridor. And the newest, best, widest bridge would not solve the bottleneck issues that occur on the other side of the river. The document that we've been asked to sign, the resolution, is pretty much patterned after, it's what the city of Vancouver has asked us to consider. I'm not comfortable with it. I think instead of signing a resolution, I'd like to see the city of La Center write a letter to the governor I would like to encourage the governor to have a conversation, because I'm a strong believer in talking, because out of talking, you can get some good ideas, you can get solutions to problems. But I think we need to go to the governor with a letter, and I would like to propose to the governor that he encourage resumption of talks, not at just local levels, but even at the highest level. I'd like to see the governor approach Governor Brown in Oregon, because I think that's what needs to be done. I also think that more than just the I-5 bridge needs to be discussed in these conversations. We need to talk about the corridor and how it affects Clark County, the center, and the whole Portland metro region. So I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Okay.
Well, I agree, Doug. We need to address the issue of traffic and congestion, but I didn't feel comfortable with the language either. In particular, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses tonight. Good luck. There's quite a bit of language in here about high-capacity transit and dedicated guideways, and, different words like multimodal. Although a walk bridge would be nice, we don't represent Clark County, we represent La Center, and I don't think we will be riding our bikes across I-5. I don't believe we'll be walking across I-5. That's my personal opinion. We will, however, be saddled with the bill, whether that be a toll or what have you. So I'm in agreement. We should start a conversation, which is what Mayor Vancouver wanted all of us to begin at the highest level. And so I would support starting that conversation, but maybe not limiting ourselves initially to this one particular fix. There might be other options, other avenues. So I kind of agree.
I feel like I'm jumping on this thing, but the traffic is not going to be fixed by the bridge. The traffic problems, we have this massive bottleneck down there. If it was the other way around, if we have 4 lanes in each direction and traffic jammed up at the bridge, then it might be a little different story here, but that isn't the case. This won't fix anything. It'll replace an old bridge, or might start replacement of an old bridge that I don't deny needs to be replaced. I mean, it's old and it's still working though, and but I think it needs to be a different approach on this. And again, getting the governors to talk, I think is the right direction on this.
Okay.
I think we all concur with the position of the city of La Center is our own position. And it doesn't necessarily mirror the city of Vancouver or any of the other municipalities or the voting entities in Clark County. And Doug and I talked at great lengths about our feelings were really strong, that just simply putting together the letter that stated what's important to our constituents, what's important to us as far as how it ties into the traffic flow, the congestion of those that are traveling back and forth for employment and schools, as well as our future with economic development and attracting the high caliber of businesses that are out there and what they're looking for specifically when they want to relocate. Traffic flow is important to them. And so I think the letter that specifically focuses on our own issues is probably more of a true reflection on who we are and what we need from the governor to address. So I concur with all of the comments that have been made.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Well, so would you be willing to draft a letter? And we'll bring that forward at a future meeting. Is that where I think we're going with this? So we'll just get that on the agenda for September 26th and draft a letter. And if the council so desires, we will advance that. But I appreciate the work, and obviously there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this and conversation, and that's wonderful. So yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, I'll take that.
So with that, we will just postpone this until future meeting on September 26th. Hopefully we can get that on the agenda. Is that in agreement?
Sure. Yes.
With everyone? Okay, very good. Thank you again. So next on the agenda, under new business, we have a Junction Sewer Line Latecomer Agreement Review and Public Comment. And this evening, we have Mr. Paul Lewis. He'll be presenting to the council.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Center citizens. Tonight is an opportunity for a briefing for you on a latecomer agreement that's being proposed between the City of La Center and the Cowlitz Indian Tribe. In your packets is a staff report, but I wanted to take time and go through a presentation. I've got about 15 slides. Yeah, if you get the bigger one, that might be more useful. 15 slides that provide an overview of the latecomer agreement, the process that we've gone through, and how it'll impact the property owners in the area. This is actually the second time that you've been briefed on this. If you remember back in May, you received a presentation. Tim Schell from Wallace Engineering is here, provided an overview of where we were at the time. And so this is just a continuation of that process, and I've got an update for you here. Also provided you with a memo earlier in August, a memo to the mayor that gave you an update at that time as well. And this will be on your agenda again at your next meeting as well. So this will hopefully be wrapped up in the next 30 to 60 days. But like I said, I've got 15 slides, a number of different topics to go through. There is no action required of you today, so it's just an opportunity to receive a briefing, ask questions, and then receive public comment. But I'll be going through a regulatory framework, an overview of the project expenses, how those expenses are being allocated to property owners that benefit from the project, the proposed fee amounts, and when the payment is due, and then just close with, again, a quick overview of the process and where we go from here. Okay? So just, this is the executive summary version. So the Cowlitz Indian Tribe has spent approximately $4.26 million. Technically, it was city funds, so the city, actually, it's a public work, the city paid for the project. The tribe is guaranteed that payment and will be repaying the city. But the tribe is essentially obligated to spend $4.26 million to construct a sewer pump station and trunk line from the wastewater treatment plant up La Center Road to the junction. You're all familiar with the project. It was completed actually earlier this year. It started last year. State law and La Center Municipal Code provide the opportunity for the tribe to be reimbursed for its costs for that project from the property owners that benefit from that infrastructure. Wallace Engineering developed the methodology. They're also construction management for the project. They came up with a methodology to allocate costs to the benefiting property owners who will pay the fee if and when they develop and connect to the city sewer system. The latecomer agreement that will be bringing forward to you hopefully on the 26th will outline the terms under which the tribe will receive payment. Essentially, the city will collect the money, and then it will provide that money to the tribe once it's paid. Okay? So that's the quick summary. A couple slides on the regulatory framework, and this is centered in two areas. One is in the Revised Code of Washington. This is a citation referencing RCW 3591.020. It's a latecomer agreement code section. It authorizes private property owners to construct required infrastructure, it's water or sewer infrastructure, and to be reimbursed from costs. So it essentially expressly provides for an agreement like this. The infrastructure has to comply with the city infrastructure standards, has to meet city requirements, has to be part of the city's comprehensive plan. The reimbursement from property owners who subsequently connect to or use the water or sewer facilities, but who did not contribute. So the RCW allows for either the city or other property owners to come together and collectively pay for this improvement and then also get reimbursed. Let me move.
Thank you.
Did that help?
Yeah.
Perfect. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a single private party. It could be a consortium of both public and private parties. And then the state law allows for reimbursement to occur up to 20 years, so over a 20-year period. And that'll be important. I'll get to sort of an issue with that in a minute. Your municipal code also provides for latecomer agreements, Chapter 13.10.240. It provides sort of the local requirements. So the state statutes provide the minimum requirements, and you can set other additional requirements as long as they're not more restrictive. And it provides your city requirements for submitting and processing requests by private parties to essentially participate or form or enter into a latecomer agreement. It provides a little bit more guidance on how you allocate the costs among the property owners, specifically looks at their pro rata share of the costs, and it relates that to the benefits that they received. Identifies that the payment is due when the building permit is issued or when a connection is made to the city sewer system, and requires 2 notices to property owners that will be subject to the latecomer agreement. One of those notices has already been sent. And provided the property owners notice of this meeting and the opportunity for public comment. With each notice, there's also an appeal right. The preliminary notice that was mailed on August 15th, 14th and 15th. The appeal is only based on whether or not the property should be included in the reimbursement area, essentially whether or not the property benefited from the infrastructure that was built. The final notice of appeal, which will be sent after you approve the agreement, also provides an appeal opportunity, and it is focused on the costs of the project and the methodology that we use to allocate those costs to benefiting property owners. And that'll be an appeal opportunity that comes after the agreement is approved but not signed. The municipal code provides for a 15-year term. We want to move that to a 20-year term to conform to state law. There'll be an ordinance change on your agenda next meeting as well to essentially just simply change the 15-year limit that you currently have to conform with the state requirement that allows up to a 20-year limit. And then the municipal code also outlines the city council approval process and the steps that are involved in that process. Okay? So a couple slides and an overview of the project. This graphic shows you essentially La Center Road is, and the sewer line is in the middle there. It's a pump station as well as the sewer line. So let me just orient you to this. To the far left or the west is Basin A. That's the junction, the La Center Junction area. There's a gravity sewer line that flows to the east down to a pump station. That pump station is just to the west, I think, of McCormick Creek, or maybe it's just to the east of McCormick Creek. Anyways, it's the low point of the area here. Service that would connect within Basin B would also flow down in there between the pump station, and you'll see another little circle dot over here in Basin B. This is a force main. Essentially, it's a pressurized pipe where sewer flow would be pushed up the hill to the point here where my cursor is. And then there's a gravity sewer line that would flow down to the wastewater treatment plant from that point. And you can see the different basins that would benefit from this sewer line. Essentially, any sewer connection here would connect here. Basin B would connect here. C would flow down here, and D obviously would just have the shortest run to the wastewater treatment plant. Again, one pump station, 4 basins served. A little bit of a typo there, incomplete sentence, but there are 84 parcels with 58 individual ownerships in the benefited area. In terms of zoning, there's Junction area. This is primarily mixed use. You spent a lot of time in your comprehensive plan and your sub-area plan approving the zoning here, but essentially mixed use in this area. This is low-density residential, 7.5, so it allows for lots in the average 7,500 square feet. Lower-density residential. This is R120, so these are 20,000 square foot lots. This is R110, so that's residential again for 10,000 square foot lots. And then this is mixed use zone towards the far eastern end of the benefiting area. So again, this bit larger area here is the residential and then mixed use on each of the ends. One of the characteristics of this area obviously is steep slopes. There's steep slopes and landslide hazards. You can see what I've tried to outline here, both in the brown and the green are both those topics, the steep slopes or landslide areas. And there's McCormick Creek, you can see flowing through there right in the center, the low point of the area. So some of this area, much of this area would not be developable because of the steep slopes, or would have significant constraints for future development. And that's an issue that we took into account, and I'll mention that again later. In terms of the project cost, total, go back here, touch on the zoning just for a minute. This is the zoning that's on there now. Obviously, this isn't the use, so we don't have small lot subdivisions here. There isn't a significant amount of mixed-use development. But in order for these properties to develop at the densities that the zoning allows, would require municipal sewer service. And so the sewer line that the tribe paid for that goes up La Center Road essentially enables those properties to develop. If somebody wanted to come and develop a property either up at the junction or in this area here, develop a new subdivision, they would likely be required to connect to the municipal sewer system, and in order to do that, they would have to provide sewer service and put that trunk line in. And so the $4.2 million is an investment that benefits all these property owners to the extent that they, if and when they develop and take advantage of the zoning and the densities that are allowed under your zoning requirements. So I just wanted to touch on that before I went further. So here's a breakdown of the total project cost. You can see you're just under $4.3 million total. The largest cost being the construction. Tapney Construction worked on the project just over $3.3 million. You can see the design, engineering, project management, and other costs. Just a breakdown there showing you the complete total. In terms of the allocation methodology, I've got a couple slides on this. I'm going to walk you through this, but under the RCW and under your municipal code, each property owner is required to pay a fee equal to their proportionate share of the new sewer pump station and trunk line cost if and when those properties develop. So effectively, we take the expenses. Wallace Engineering developed a methodology I'll go through in a second that allocates those costs to the benefiting property owners in a proportionate way. But the costs only have to be reimbursed, the fee only has to be paid if and when those properties redevelop and connect to the sewer system. So the costs were allocated to the four basins, essentially using a sort of a two-factor methodology. First, the costs associated with the actual construction of the line were allocated to the basins that they served, that those lines principally served. And then a secondary allocation looked at the flow from each of those basins and what those properties used in terms of that full infrastructure. And I'll get to that in a minute when I walk through the cost table and the allocation. But essentially what that means is properties in Basin A, up at the junction, furthest away from the treatment plant and near La Center Road, they pay a higher fee because they pay for they actually use the full line and the pump station. Whereas a property right next to Timon Road just uses that short section of gravity line, doesn't have to pay for its share of the cost of the pump station because its property wouldn't use the pump station. So that's the concept that we're working with here in terms of the allocation of the cost. We allocated the cost to the properties in the four basins using essentially the same methodology that was used to design the project, essentially to design the sewer line and the pump station, what it was designed to handle. And it was designed to handle the estimated future demand in reference to total equivalent residential units. It's a way of categorizing sewer demand. And each ERU is effectively the same demand that a single-family home would generate. So the ERUs with each basin were based on the developable acres in those basins and the zoning of those acres. And we used essentially metrics that Clark Regional Wastewater District uses. They're the largest regional wastewater utility, so used their guidelines for identifying the sewer demand. And then we identified the developed acres using Clark County's metrics for discounting for the hazards that are on the property, so the slopes and critical areas that would allow those properties not to be developed to their full acreage, as well as deducting for streets and other infrastructure that would be required upon development. So we use those two types of metrics to identify the developable ERUs in each basin. And those are the ERUs per acre that Clark Regional Wastewater, that's CRWD, is Clark Regional Wastewater District uses. Essentially 4.4 ERUs per acre for any property that's zoned commercial. So this would be part of the mixed use, would be a combination here of the commercial and the industrial. Mixed use is a separate category, so it's 7.0. And then residential is 4.95 ERUs per acre. Okay? So those were the metrics that were used to identify the ERUs in each of the basins. So I want to walk you through this table, which shows how Wallace Engineering calculated the actual fee amount for properties in each of the basins. So you can see the basins down the left-hand side. We lumped together basins C and D because of the impact that they have and what they use in terms of the sewer line. But the allocated costs, just take that 4.256 million and identify the costs that are associated with the specific improvements that are serving those areas. So $709,000, for example, is the cost of the sewer improvements in Basin A. That Basin A has 455 equivalent residential units of sewer demand. So if you take the 709,000 divided by the 455, you get $1,558. So that's effectively the static cost of the improvements in Basin A. You can do the same for the next Basin B, 2.5 million. This has the force main and the pump station, so it's a much more expensive section of the sewer line. There are fewer ERUs in Basin B, 233. So the individual construction cost per ERU and then in Basin B, you want to identify how much flow is flowing through Basin B. It's the 233 that comes from Basin B plus the 455 that comes from Basin A. So it's a total of 688 ERUs that pass through Basin B and the improvements that serve Basin B. Okay? And we do the 2,507,000 divided by the 688, you get $3,644. And that's, again, the static cost for Basin B. Same math for Basin C and D. All of the ERUs that are served by this line pass through Basin C and D, so it's 1,070. The $1,040,000 divided by the 1,070 is just under $1,000 per ERU. So we use those numbers to figure out what the total cost should be at each of the basins. So Basin A, since it actually has to pay for the cost of Basin A plus Basin B plus the C and D section, it is the sum total of the 1,558, the 3,644, and the 972 for $6,174.61. Okay, so it has to pay for not only its line, but also its share, its proportionate share of the other improvements between it and the sewage treatment plant. Same kind of logic for Basin B. It pays for its costs plus its share of the cost for Basin C and D. So the 3,644 and the 972, or 4,616. And Basin C and D just has to pay for its own. Okay? So that's how the methodology was constructed, and Tim's here, I'm sure he could have helped me out here in terms of explaining this, but I think it gives you the sense of how those costs were developed. Okay? The proposed latecomer fee, again, the $61.74, the $46.16, and $9.72. The actual latecomer fee charged for any proposed development will be based on the ERUs associated with that development. So we did this from a planning perspective, using the planning study, the engineering study that was used for the sewer line. But if 10 hotels develop up at the junction, it's going to be different than what we've modeled here, and those hotels will pay, they'll have ERUs that are associated with them. Those ERUs for hotels are actually codified in your municipal code, and so they'll pay that dollar amount fee times the ERU, the per ERU fee. So an example would be, general commercial area, 1,600 foot general commercial building is essentially the equivalent of one ERU, so they pay one of those. A hotel is one ERU for every 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And there's a whole table that was sent out actually in the preliminary notice that shows you what kind of ERUs are associated with different development. Okay? Again, the payment's due at the time the building permit is issued or for a subdivision when connection is made. It's really meant to pay for any benefit that's provided to a property owner. The latecomer fee is in addition to the system development charge, and you recently adopted a system development charge for this area south of the East Fork of the Lewis River at $5,841. So the SDC primarily pays for the treatment plant expansion and other improvements. The sewer line was not part of the calculation of that system development charge. If it had been, the systems development charge that the property owners would pay in this area would be much higher. It'd have to cover essentially that $4.3 million in addition to the cost that it is covering. The total latecomer fee and system development charge for Basin A is the $12,015. The Basin B is $10,457, and Basin C and D would be $6,813. And just for reference purposes, the systems development charge for the area north of the river is $7,800. So just to give you a sense of where that fits in. So that's all the slides I had in terms of content. In terms of the process, the preliminary notice that's required by your municipal code was sent to the property owners, mailed on the 14th and 15th. Presentation is today. Public comment to City Council from property owners is today, tonight's meeting. We hope to have the latecomer agreement before you next meeting, September 26th. Once you review and approve that agreement, there'll be a final notice that will go out to the property owners, and then the property owners will have 20 days to appeal after that notice is mailed. And if there is no appeal filed, then the agreement will be signed by both parties. Again, tonight, opportunity for public comment and any council questions or feedback. September 26th, the agreement. We also will have that code change for you, going from 15 to 20 years. In your municipal code, and hope to have the final agreement signed by the city and the tribe in October. If there's no appeal, if there is an appeal, there's a process in your municipal code that provides for you to consider the appeal and refer it to a hearings examiner for more consideration. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Paul, on the 15 and 20 year thing, that means the payment can be dispersed over that, the latecomer's fee and SDC can be, or latecomer's fee can be dispersed over that amount of time?
No, it provides a time frame within which that latecomer fee can be collected. So if you were to develop in any year, whenever you get your building permit, you'd have to pay the full fee that's charged. But it's only allowed to be collected for 20 years. So 25 years from 20 years and 1 day after the agreement is signed, the latecomer fee will not be collected. The tribe is not eligible for reimbursement for a period longer than 20 years.
So any development that happens within the next 20 years is subject to the fee?
Correct.
Thank you.
Development that occurs after that time period would not be. Other questions?
Just one moment. Any other questions for Mr. Lewis? Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation, Paul. Appreciate it. Okay, so now there'll be opportunity for anybody that would like to address the council regarding this matter. If you would please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes.
3 minutes,
Well, do your best,
My
Jim.
name in 3 minutes.
Okay.
My name is Jim Aurelia, and I live at 31010 Northwest Spencer Road, Ridgefield, Washington. You guys haven't changed my address. Put me in the Palace Center, I'd go over to Ridgefield to stop my mail. But anyway, did Paul talk to the engineer before he figured out all this stuff? Because the numbers, the figures you're given, you put my lot at 20,000 square foot lots. And the mayor's, or the city's telling me I got 6,500 square foot lots and I have to have low cost housing. I'd love to put $1 million houses up there, but they won't let me. No, will you let me?
Not to me.
You're charging me, you're just telling me your figures are based on that.
It's based on, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, if you would, please, Paul. And so we'll, yeah, if you would answer that, please.
So the methodology that we used took residential land, and I think it was the 4.95 units per acre, calculated the equivalent residential unit demand that would be coming from residential property using that calculation. So it's just a way of allocating the costs of the sewer line to different properties. So the 4.95, I think, is the number that was used as part of the methodology. If you come in and develop at a higher density and you have higher ERUs, you will end up paying more in terms of a latecomer fee. If you come in and are able to develop at a lower, then you'll pay lower fees, but your ERUs will be calculated based on what you actually are permitted to develop, and not necessarily based on the methodology that was used.
Okay. Now, I want to thank the council, but they've really done a good job in the past and everything, and they served us very well. I love their parks. But right now, we've got a project that I've taken Tony over it, and he's looked at it, but the city's telling me I gotta have 6,500 square foot lots, is that right?
I think it's
7,500 square foot lots, yeah. So that's what,
7.5.
yeah.
4 lots per acre or something like that?
Well, 4.95 is what was in the calculation on average, but yeah, that's the way the zoning overlay is over part of the total property in that study in the aggregate, yeah.
We're developing 82 acres with about
Right. And
5 different families that we promised them to help them when they went into the city. But now, with these 300 houses, we're going to be paying something like $1.4 million on your project, which is almost a quarter of that thing, or a little over a quarter. And I don't think that's fair. I'm not into the legal, illegal, that's this
Right.
guy's project.
So-
I'm into the fair and the unfair, or the right and the wrong. But I think we need to look at that a little bit. And the other thing is, they left us a high-pressured system right at our area to hook into, so we gotta have a pump station to pump it up to that high-pressured system. So we're gonna have to put a pump station, actually 2 pump stations probably before we get done with the project. But we're gonna have 2 pump stations, we're gonna have to develop roads into 15 or 900 feet of road that we have to put sidewalks, and then we'll have to put a U-turn or a left-hand turn lane on Timmons, or on Lay Center Road. Plus, we have to have a second way out, which will be Timmons or Spencer Road. And we'll have to have a left turn lane on that with sidewalks and everything. And very soon, the developers are looking at that, and they're saying, and then you're gonna add not $1.4 million on top of that, but your regular fees is at $30,000 per lot, which makes it $9 million we're gonna have to pay to put this project together to the city, plus all the infrastructure to make it work, which I think to some of it's unfair, needs to be looked at again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and the city staff will continue to work with you on that, Jim, and answer any and all questions that you have. But I appreciate you coming to the council this evening. Thank you.
My name's Colleen Wing, and I live at 31103 Northwest 18th Avenue, Ridgeville. And the whole other side of my street is the white blank spot that's not in Basin A or Basin B, and I want to know why I would pay and they wouldn't. So that was, I don't understand why they're skipped.
Okay. Well, we would, staff will take a look at that, and we'll definitely get you an answer on that. We don't have all the drawings here and everything
What was on his
tonight.
map? There was a white strip right down the middle.
Yeah, but we don't have any parcels.
And then I
yeah.
also went on there, why is there a $250 fee to find out anything? The appeal said you had 20 days from when we received it, which was before this meeting, to even find out what it was about. And there's a $250 fee to appeal. Why is that so expensive?
Yeah. Do you want to address that, Paul?
So the appeal fee is to appeal whether or not you benefit from the sewer line. So the appeal fee is essentially to provide a little bit of a threshold to make it sure it was a reasonable appeal, because the council's going to have to consider it, staff's going to have to take time to consider it. So it's just a fee to file the appeal of whether or not you benefit from the sewer line. So it's not to get information. The information is free. Come to staff, and they'll provide you with information, answer any questions you have about the
So,
lake.
but I'm not guaranteed I'm going to be determined not to benefit. Or to
I
benefit.
think you can get information from city staff to decide whether or not you think you benefit. And then the other piece of this is you don't pay a fee if you don't redevelop your property. So it's only if you connect to the public sewer system that you would be required to pay the fee.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Frank Zarek, 31705 Northwest 18th Avenue. Anyway, my question is, the word requirement. What's stopping you from requiring me to take my septic system, disconnect from it, and connect to this? What are the chances of that? Can anybody answer that?
I'm sorry, your question is, what's
It's
the,
pretty clear. What's stopping you from requiring me to disconnect from my septic system and requiring me to connect to the city sewer system?
yeah. Well, we do have that part of the ordinance right now. I believe it's, first of all, there'll be no requirement for you to disconnect from your septic system and connect to the city sewer system. And I think, Tim, do you want to address that question, or Paul? I know there's a,
Well,
or Tony, yeah.
no. I mean, if you have septic systems that's working, unless you develop the property and you short plat, like over 4 lots or a subdivision, you wouldn't be required to connect into the system unless you do that. So if you have a septic system that's working, it wouldn't be in the city's best interest or your best interest to make you disconnect to it. We don't want a bunch of blind connections all to the sewer system. If your septic system failed and you were within 200 feet, you know, if there's a connection available, you probably should, you would be required to connect into it. But for a residential home, it wouldn't be really feasible to just make you connect. It wouldn't be feasible for us, we would want all those connections. It's only if you develop, and your development is more than a short plat or a subdivision, that you would be required to connect into it.
The other question would be, you bring up a good point about 200 feet. As the crow flies, or as a pipe would have to be buried into the ground and connected to that? Because I live, if I got a slingshot, I can hit the center road with a rock if I can get it over the trees.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a long way around to get to the road. Right? You're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at 300, probably about, probably 100 yards or more. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
For me to have that expensive, my septic system needed to be replaced. Luckily, it doesn't. But if that should happen, septic tank cracks or something beyond my control, which that would be a failing, that would fail me.
Yeah.
You can tell me I've got to dig all that out there? I guess spend
Well, I think-
$10,000, $12,000 and
Yeah.
dig all that out. I would have to sell, I would just have to just set my place on fire
Yeah.
and collect the insurance. I mean, that's what you would be forced to do.
Yeah, no,
I like
it has to be a feasible way to connect. I mean, you can't just connect.
Is that
blindly
covered
to
in
people's
ordinance?
property.
And
So,
where can I find the ordinance at so I can understand
it's
clearly?
in, well, we could give you that reference.
This is why we
It's-
see that.
Yeah, it's under, I believe it's under section 13, but I have to look, under the municipal code where it talks about that.
Okay, my next question is, for the $250 fee, is it per lot, per person, or just a group? We could just go in as a group and say, I'm part of this, and
It's an appeal fee.
so we can collectively just buck up
Right, so the-
$15 and
The appeal under the preliminary notice is allowed for the topic of whether or not your properties would benefit if you redeveloped from the sewer line. So that's, and that appeal window has already closed. So there's a 20-day window for the appeal for that. The second opportunity for appeal is when the final notice gets issued, and that appeal is based on how the costs were allocated and the cost of the project. So those are the two elements, and if you want more information about sort of what specifically your appeal can cover, we'd be happy to talk with you about that.
You
I
know
can
what?
close before we have
That-
any
that
opportunity
sounds-
to find out what it's about.
Yeah, that sounds pretty slimy.
Yes.
You know,
So-
first of all, is it working days? I can't file for an appeal on weekends. So why is this only 20 days, not 30? Why is the meeting pushed out so far? Colleen brought up that point. I don't think it was really addressed properly by anybody.
So I think in the,
I think we, it sounds like the center made an agreement and had a requirement for you to put something in, and then you came in through the back door, and you're trying to fund it now. That's what this seems like to me. But anyway,
Okay, thank you for your comments, and we will continue to answer the questions at the staff level. Please feel free to come in and talk with Mr. Cooper, or we'll have staff available to answer any and all questions that you have. But I appreciate your comments, thank you.
Hi, Dinah McLean. I have property at 31907 Northwest Pollock Road. I kind of have the same concern that we were sent a letter and asked to appeal before we got a Q&A session of any type. So before there's the next letter and a next appeal, I request a public question and answer session about what's going on, so that we have time to react.
Okay.
And then I had some questions about, if all the latecomers or fees are paid by someone else upfront, like if all the 4.25 million, not that it would, but got paid, then how does that affect everybody else during that 15 or 20 years? Do they still have to keep paying, or if there's less income, is that forgiven, or how does that all work? How does the system development charge then compare to other areas? Did I hear something about 7,000 in Portland and 12,000 up here or something?
no, 7,800 is the charge to the north of the East Fork of the Lewis River within the city. So it's a 7,800 versus 5,400 in the area south of the East Fork of the Lewis River. So
Okay,
it's
so-
lower in your area.
But in general too, like I'd like to find out about how it compares to other cities. And then my other questions offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Wheaton, 1119 West C Avenue. I just got a couple of questions. I guess I should just ask Paul. I saw a lot of figures tossed around, but what I want to know is if we're going to repay the tribe, if we're repaying the tribe, are we paying them exactly what they paid? Are we going to give them more, or are we going to give them less?
So the Lightcomber agreement is based on the costs that were incurred for the project, and that's what they're eligible to be reimbursed for, the cost of the project.
Because the other question to me is, and you know this has bothered me for a long time, if their injection system fails, and they are required by the state DEQ to hook up into our system, will they hook up for $66 a month? Or will they pay a fee, or will they even pay to hook up? I mean, that's
Yeah.
if, you know.
Yeah, that, we don't have, that's.
Well, I
yeah,
know,
going
but
with-
it's something, because I know this injection system is low-tech.
Yeah, well, thank you, but that's really not what we're talking about this evening, Mr. Lewis.
Money,
So,
we're talking money, you know, I trust these guys about as far as I can throw them, I'm sorry, and if we don't.
well, thank you for your
speak
comments,
up,
but we're
it's
really
gonna
not
cost us
talking
money.
about that this evening, but thank you.
Rick Davis, 1017 West 8 Circle, 3 blocks.
Good, how are you?
Hey, is it possible to get that 15 slide document? And I hate addressing Paul because you're paying him to do this, so can we get that document?
It's on the website. It's on the website. Yeah, you can.
Paul, not Becky. How do you come up with $2.5 million for Basin B? It's like the third grade. I missed the whole trip. Miss Romeo was up there talking, and I got in halfway. Basin B's $2.5 million.
So, do you have any other questions besides that this evening?
Just one.
Okay.
It's not a question, comment, public comment.
Good.
So we started this whole drill, it's going to benefit the entire city. And I wasn't a big fan of it. And it seems to me, this gentleman here, he went around and knocked on doors and got it all going. Whether it's a benefit for the city today or not, I would encourage us to kind of rethink this thing. For example, the Parrott property was $120,000 an acre. They put 1,300 feet of line in, throw a pump at the Stone Creek area. These guys are gonna go over it. That land's topographically challenged as a rule of thumb. Call's not moving tomorrow. It's not gonna get developed, so it's okay. 20 years goes by, I'll be dead, he'll be long gone. When it's all said and done, I kind of arrived at Three Musketeers, all for one for all. It's gonna really benefit the city. The number they used to bandy about was $1 million in 20 years worth of the build out. I don't think it's gonna generate that kind of money. But in principle, if it did, we got Newla Center and Old La Center. So should Newla Center keep all the tax base in? If it really generated $1 million in taxes, I mean, they're asked to pay for this great benefit to the city. And then they're gonna share it amongst everybody. So I guess my comment would be, everybody that's in town here on this side of the river, could they help contribute to the cost of that pipe, our lifeline to the universe? Who's gonna save us? I'm still a fan of, we've been dying since 1840, and it was a great place to live, thank you. And just kind of stuns me that we're not all paying for it, if we're all gonna benefit from it. That's every development on both sides of the river. And it's precluding property values up there from achieving the full. And regarding pumps, you go out there and try to put yours into a pressurized line, you might end up with your shower full of effluent. So there's a lot of mechanical issues that go into solving just a simple line that goes down there. And on a separate note, a question for the group, these properties in general, when it comes time to get there, is it still, it used to be Southwest Washington Health District. So now we're in the city limits on this property, they have septic tanks, so who's administering it's okay, Tony, I don't think you're going out and.
That would be Clark County Environmental Health.
So they're still-
They permitted it, yeah, they're the ones that permit the septic systems.
Okay, and you
We
can
just,
still use your reserve drain field on your 5 acres, 20 acres.
yeah, that's all through Clark County, yeah, you could still, I mean, it's still the same process you'd have to go through to get approval.
And then
Yeah.
in general, you take 1,170 ERUs times about $5,000, you end up with over $5 million. That would pay for a pipeline, but it doesn't pay for the equivalent of the $7,000 that you're paying on this side of the river, with however many broad scope lots would be developed on the north side of the river here. Is there some way we could sit down, sounds like we're a little far down the pike, to come up with an equitable arrangement? And I appreciate the tip that it's on the website. But $2.5 million for Basin B, my head is swimming.
Okay. Well, if you don't have any other questions, what I'll do is ask Mr. Shell to address that. Can you explain why?
Yeah, yes, Mayor. When I looked at the cost for the project, so the contractor submitted his bid, and his bid had about 75 different line items for various things, mobilization, 12-inch pipe, the pump station, et cetera. So I looked at each particular bid item and broke that down into quantity by quantity, how much was in Basin A, Basin B, Basin C, and Basin D. And then they did that throughout the whole project for each element and each bid item, and that's how I came up with this sum. So, if there was 20% of the force main or the gravity main that was in Basin B, I took 20% of
Okay,
that.
that amount, yeah. So, and we will be available to work with you individually on that, Rick, to get you the more detailed explanation.
In
But
theory, if you're pumping effluent to the top of the hill, they're gonna pay for those pumps, similar to the Stone Creek or what have you. It gets up there, it's not going back down that hill. So they're not utilizing X amount, which is roughly half of that pipeline, and it's downhill anyway. And it seemed to me that the cost of the pump station, the engineering, the design, $50-some thousand for electricity to run, would be the lion's share of that cost. So I would imagine that would be an appeal basis there, or not. I'd just like to study that and discuss that with somebody. And I may have that wrong.
If I can, Mayor.
yes, please.
So this is as Tim mentioned, the cost as he allocated them were $2.5 million for Basin B, and I think that's largely due to the expense of the pump station and the gravity sewer, or excuse me, the force main, as opposed to the gravity sewer on the other end, right? So the $2.5 million. But if you look at the costs for development in Basin B, so the $4,600, the bulk of the cost of the sewer line is going to be paid in Basin A. Really, Basin B is going to pay $1 million, $1.1 million of the cost.
How come I'm in Basin B and I have to pay 1.4 million?
It depends on your development, and I'm sure that there's all sorts of discussions that we can have with staff, that this is the way the methodology was developed, based on the ERUs that the system was designed for. And we're happy to have conversations with you about that if there's an alternative. Go ahead and make a call to Tony.
Come to our office and we'll get the information, and what we can't answer, we'll get to Tim and Paul and determine what,
Well, who's driving the numbers?
In terms of a methodology, the methodology was developed by Wallace.
Okay.
So this methodology was developed by Wallace.
Can I ask you is this little thing, the casinos?
No, that's-
What's that little piece over there? It's by itself.
That's land that is in the city's urban growth, or excuse me, the city
Okay, we'll
limits
see
is
the
on
map.
the west side.
Coffee shop.
Where the coffee place was.
Yeah, so, yeah, the city does have, the city doesn't own any property on the west side of the freeway, but there is a small parcel of property there that's included in the city limits. Yeah. Right.
Can I find out how many ERUs are assigned to You said there's 233 in Basin B, right? If I remember correctly. 233. And how many parcels are there?
There are 84 total parcels. I don't have the breakdown right now with Basin B or C.
So you're assuming that, my parcel is 5.86 acres, and it's going to be broken down into X amount.
Right, so it uses that methodology, so 4.95 units per acre, but then we discount the acreage based on, well, you'll have to have driveways and streets, to serve the development. If there were critical areas in your property, those were excluded as well. So there's some math behind this that we'd be happy to walk you through in terms of how that.
I was more concerned, well, one of the things I'm concerned with my property is I've got a tributary from the former creek on there with that whole area is unbuildable.
Perfect. And so that's taken into account here in terms of the critical areas.
Yeah, like the pipeline, I mean, you can see that from map. We have a big pipeline through our property, so it's reasonable. Did you guys take that into account?
Well, I think that the point is that you're only going to get charged for being assessed for development that actually happens.
Right.
If you're on a property that has high slopes and you're not going to be able to develop that land, then you won't have houses there, and they're not going to be charged for. You won't be assessed a fee for those areas.
It's just setting up not that we're diametrically opposed to developing the junction. It's just land over here is going to be cheaper by a long shot as a result of it, by about $1 million on Jim's piece. So will he sell or not? It's up to him. He may go to his grave, he may not. But in the end, if I was a developer, I'd go across over here and when every bit of this land within our urban growth development is developed over it, then I might come back and look at this side of the road. Nobody wants to go first. Yeah, I've been at this for 15 years now, as we got the Oklahoma land grab out to the junction there, and another couple decades may go by. So it's either going to be beneficial to us as a result of economies of scale, which land's better to be developed. And that's really what we're up against right now.
The only comment that I would have is that property, in order to develop this property at the densities that it's zoned, somebody would have to make a connection to the city sewer system for it to develop. So that scenario where the property on the other side of the river would develop first would probably take place if this weren't developed and there weren't a charge.
But we could live there and not develop it, and heck with your sewer and your increase, you don't get it. You've got to realize what John Kennedy said, when you lower the price, you get more income. And that's, you lower taxes, you get more income. And that, you guys are raising taxes.
Okay, yeah, please.
My name's Rick Ian with 319 Circle. I have one question to the mayor and the council. We just moved here, my wife and I, about 2 years ago, so we're new. My question is, why is this latecomer agreement here? Why are we having to deal with it? Is it bad planning? Because what I looked into, it's a way to recoup money for bad planning.
For what kind of planning?
Planning.
Yeah.
So if you guys could explain that a little bit.
So, yeah, the latecomers agreement is in place in order to reimburse the tribe for the investment that they made for the sewer line out to the junction. And that's what it's for. And that sewer line was built for the purpose of developing land on the west side of the center bridge. Right. So, but property owners will only be responsible for paying any portion of that line only if they ultimately choose to further develop your property. If you choose not to do that, there'll be absolutely no cost to the property owners.
Well, I think a lot of people are upset here because this is our nest egg. I mean, a lot of people have invested and lived here. Now we get surprised with no really answers, besides we just have to recoup and pay for the rest of the city's issues.
Well, you don't have to pay for anything if you don't
Well, if we
redevelop
develop,
it.
and I think a lot of people here are holding on to their property to develop. Maybe not today, but in 20 years, for sure.
Well, then at that time, you would have to be able to hook up to the city of Center sewer system, and in order to do that, that line would have to be there. So it's only available to you if, and, well, you would have to pay for it regardless. I mean, just like development on this side of the bridge, those developers that paid for the infrastructure for the collection system for the sewer that goes into the wastewater treatment plant.
Well, it just doesn't seem like this fine gets us anything. You're still gonna have to pay for it to get hooked up, but what is that? Does anybody understand what that? You know, I mean, I think $5,000 or $4,000 we have to pay for each lot. So we're just paying on top of that. Maybe I'm confused, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it said 10,000
And
something
then
total,
you gave us numbers
but
that didn't match.
4,000 of it is the latecomer fee, right? 4,000 is it.
And there's impact fees for development, whether, again, wherever that's happening in the county, wherever, that's just part of developing. That's a cost of development. So, but again, you don't incur any of those costs until you decide to redevelop your property to a higher density. If it stays as is, there's no cost to you. You can continue living your, on your.
I understand that.
Yeah. So, but if you were to develop in the future, the only way you would be able to develop in the future is if there was infrastructure in place in order for the property owners to hook up the sewer system. So, yeah.
And one last question, who do you represent? Do you represent the tribe or do you represent the center?
I work with the city.
Thank you.
So again, staff is available to answer your questions. Just contact Public Works, make an appointment with the city engineer, and we'd be happy to walk through these costs with you.
Great guys.
Yeah, so please feel free to call us.
Okay.
Do you have something
Let's
else,
make
Paul?
one final point to
Yeah, and then we're going to wrap this up. Again, I think, I appreciate everybody's comments this evening, but what I really want to stress is that, staff will be available to answer your questions and to provide you any and all information that you're going to need to get comfortable with this process.
So again, the fee that will be charged based on the basin that you're in, but only if and when you develop. So if you don't develop, you don't pay the fee.
I get that.
If you were to develop, you pay this fee in lieu of having to figure out how to get your sewer from your lot down to the sewage treatment plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the $4,000 or $6,000 in lieu of having to figure out how to get your sewage from your subdivision or however you develop your property. So it's really you're reimbursing somebody that's paid for it. If the city were to have built that line, it would get reimbursed through a system development charge that would have been roughly the equivalent. In this instance, the tribe built the property, so they're, through a latecomer agreement, allowed to be reimbursed for the costs.
But other properties that aren't in these basins don't have to pay that fee or fine, I guess it would be called.
They're paying a system development charge, and they've paid for the infrastructure that serves their properties already.
Little strip of properties.
Yeah, and we can answer the questions about the strips and things as well. Okay, so that's the point, is the latecomer fee, this fee is in lieu of having to figure out how to get your sewer to the sewer plant. That's been done for you, and you pay, if you were to develop and create lots and houses, you would pay this additional $4,000, $6,000 fee in lieu of having to figure out how to get your sewage from your lots down to the treatment plant.
Is there a comparison of what would be the regular fee versus this fee?
You just said the total was 10,000 something.
Yeah, so in addition to this, there's a system development charge of $58.41, which pays for the treatment plant portion for you, and that fee is actually $7,800 for the rest of the city across the bridge. Okay? So the fee is in lieu of having to figure out how to get your sewage to the treatment plant.
Thank you very much, Paul. Again, I appreciate all the input, all the questions. I'm not comfortable that we have satisfied everybody's own individual questions for your own individual properties. Again, I would encourage you to contact city staff, and we will work with you individually to get all your questions answered. With that, I'd like to move on with the agenda. But I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that we're not going to answer your questions. We are available to do that. We have City Engineer Tony Cooper, and we also have Wallace, representative from Wallace Engineering, Mr. Tim Shell. they will be available to answer your questions. Again, thank you for your comments, and thank you for your input, and thank you for coming here this evening. With that, we'll move on. Next, we do have a presentation by city engineer. He'll be talking about a study for the stormwater utility formation. Tony, if you could please present.
Thanks, Mary. So this is actually a stormwater utility formation study. Now, the action requested is for the mayor to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with FCS Group to assess formation of a stormwater utility in the center. So just to let you give you a little of the background, the city of La Center in 2018, the city council included a $50,000 study forming a stormwater utility to help pay for costs associated with stormwater management. The city of La Center is the only city in Clark County that does not assess a stormwater utility fee. So the proposal is to complete a stormwater utility formation study submitted by FCS Group. And as you remember, FCS Group is recently completed the analysis for the sewer system development charge. And they work with various cities for this kind of task. The proposed scope of the work includes the following: project kickoff and data collection, policy framework, and then a rate study, and then documentation and presentation of the results. So FCS expects to begin work in September and finish by the end of the year, although they have till June 30th, 2019 to finish. So the cost of their proposal is $46,130 is within the budget. Now, I think included in that package, it has actually a professional services agreement, PSA, which is a standard contract with consultants. And then it has an Exhibit A that actually goes into a lot more depth of what they're going to do. But basically what they're going to do is just assess the formation of it and figure out if it's feasible, collect a lot of data from the city as far as the needs, the maintenance that the city does right now, any problems that the city has, anything in the future that would incur costs with the improve the stormwater facility and keep maintaining the stormwater facility. So it's just a rate study right now to determine, what type of SDC charge could be assessed.
Would be feasible,
So
yeah.
is there any questions on it?
And this is something that was approved in the 2018
Yes, the 2018
budget.
budget.
So this is a budgeted item. All we're doing right now is coming to council and asking for the authorization to go forward with the study. Any questions for Mr. Cooper? Comments?
There's a lot of detail in here, very
There's a
thorough.
lot of detail, and I wasn't, actually Paul Lewis coordinated with FCS, so he's familiar with a lot of this, but basically it's a study to recoup costs in the future that we already, that we already have to have the city staff and public works, incur right now.
Do you know offhand, you mentioned in your memorandum that the center's the only municipality that does not have a stormwater district.
Yeah.
What are the fees running in other communities in Clark County?
That I couldn't tell you, maybe Paul has an idea, because he's been coordinated with that.
Yeah, usually $8 a month is typical, most are above that, but that's sort of a rough average, median, or maybe even a minimum.
Kind of depends on how much improvement needs to be done, if there's infrastructure needs being, problems with the storm system, maintenance. It also includes sometime, a lot of jurisdictions that are required to be under the NPDES Phase 2 permit requirements, which we don't, our city is so small it doesn't trigger that, but that triggers something that the Department of Ecology requires cities to do a lot more reporting on the stormwater system effluent, have a plan for increasing or for improving the stormwater facility, storm drains, things like that that are insufficient or need to be improved. It also includes things like notifying the public of the whole process of the what's being done to keep the water clean and things like that. So there's a lot of things that are incurred under this phase 2 permitting that a lot of cities have to build into their cost that we don't right now. And at some point in the future, if the Department of Ecology said, you need to comply with this, it would be an additional cost that the city would have to incur. So some of us are going to kind of, if that ever happened, we want to have some kind of way to incur that.
Are we opening a Pandora's box here?
Yeah, well, no, and it's based on population, so like cities over 10,000, they're.
Yeah, we're a ways from that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
anyway,
Thank you.
that's
Yeah.
what it's for. Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Cooper? Do you have something?
I know it's getting late, but I'm just curious if there's any budget impact for us so far, looking backwards, for not having a stormwater utility? Or are we looking at future, you just mentioned,
Well, that's potential, but right now we incur costs. The city incurs costs. They have to do a lot of maintenance on the
Sure.
existing storm system that just comes out of the general
We'll
budget.
let Paul address that,
Yeah.
answer that question. That's a good question. So Paul, do you want to take that one?
Yes, so your adopted budget actually had
Thank you, Tony.
formation of the stormwater utility plan for this year, so we hope to have the study done during the middle of the year. And rough estimates were roughly $50,000 of benefit to the general fund for 2018. So, but that was for a portion of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? So can I get a motion to approve the expenditure?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the attached contract with FCS Group to study formation of a stormwater utility in La Center.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with FCS Group to access formation of a stormwater utility in the city of La Center. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff. Okay.
Before we move on, shortly.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's right now about 5 minutes after 8. We'll take a 5-minute recess and we adjourn here at 10 minutes after 8.
Just got back from a speeder trip. I drove 870. I took a speeder trip to Walla Walla and Lewiston, and then 875 miles of road miles, 275 miles of track miles. I got home last night. I was tired. Jeez.
Yes.
That's it? Okay. We all here? Oh, Doug, where's Doug?
Do you see that?
Hey, Doug, you ready to go? Hey, Doug, you ready to go? Okay, we'll continue on with the meeting. We have one more item on the agenda this evening. As you all know, earlier this year, Councilmember Valenzuela resigned as a city council member. This evening, the council will interview 3 candidates to fill that position as position 4 for the La Center City Council. Again, we have three candidates. They're all here this evening. We have Mr. Dennis Hill, Mr. Michael Santora, and Mr. Thomas Stolen. And so what I'd like to do this evening and how to conduct this is I would ask of the 3 candidates, one to stay in the room, and it's really up to you. I'm asking if you would please leave, the other 2 candidates would leave the room so we can interview 1 candidate at a time. When we're finished with that interview, that person will leave the room and we'll interview the second one and then on to the third person. Once the council has the interview process completed, we will go into executive session for a short period of time, and then after that executive session, we will come out and we will, council will make their decision in public. So it's going to be a public process with just a few minutes that we'll be spending in executive session. And again, it's I'm asking if you would consider leaving the room. The city clerk did put these in order, so the first candidate that will be interviewing tonight will be Dennis Hill, and if he could step up to the podium and we'll ask the questions, and I appreciate the other two doing that.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we have a series of questions for you this evening,
Okay.
Dennis, and I'm going to ask each of the council members to ask one question. We have 4 questions, so we'll start with Mr. Williams, and we'll carry on through.
Does he get to do the intro first?
Huh?
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you want to have?
But I want to start, yeah, so I'm just trying to go over the process here real quick, but to begin with, I'd like to just allow you 3 to 5 minutes to share with us your background, how long you've lived in La Center, the skills and experience relating to the city council position that you bring to the council. So with that, if you please take a few minutes and give us some of your background, and then we'll ask our questions.
Thank you. Again, Dennis Hill, 1316 West Alder Place. My wife and I, Judy, we moved here in 2011, built a home up in Foothill Estates. Later in that same year, I saw an opportunity to get involved in the city, and I put my name up to be part of the planning commission, and the mayor at that time put me on as an alternate. I later became a regular member and have been about 7 years on the planning commission. Prior to that, I'm retired from the Boeing Company after 35 years. During that time, I was in management most of those years, and was involved in human resources, management staffing for a number of years on the B-1B bomber program. I handled the management staffing at the manager, director, vice president level for California, Tulsa, and Columbus, Ohio. And that was all done in Los Angeles at that time. During that time also, I was responsible during that time to develop and be responsible for some fairly significant budgets, upwards of $150 million budgets that I developed and had to maintain and present monthly to senior management. So I am familiar with a little bit of the interworkings of the finance side of the house. And I know that this council has to deal with those things occasionally here. And we'll be doing that particularly here for the coming budget, I know. I also have experience in working with cities. I was a business owner a number of years ago and also an apartment house owner. So that put me in touch with the cities as far as various codes and maintenance of our facilities. Also for business and involved with the various cities and I had offices or departments within these cities to conduct business. During my tour with Boeing, I was on the board of directors for the Torrance Chamber of Commerce for several years. And during that time, I had one of the roles I had was the myself and another person were the interface between the City Council of Torrance and the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce in Torrance was a very, very active, very large organization. Torrance at that time was around 100,000 population. But that gave me another opportunity. Mostly it was pretty much sitting in the audience and taking notes and reporting back at our next meeting what was going on. I was kind of the eyes and ears of the council in that standpoint, or the chamber, on what kind of things are being discussed at the council level that might impact or we may have a responsible for things to do and so on. But other than that, I've been involved, as I say, in the city here, pretty active as far as coming to the various meetings throughout the month and trying to keep up to speed on what's happening, what kind of things are happening within the city that you're having to make decisions on, and some of them are pretty significant. And a big decision you made this evening. I think that's about it for me.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we will get into the questioning portion of this. Councilmember Williams, if you would start, please.
And I know where Torrance is. I used to have a house in Lomita. I grew up in Palos
Oh, yeah.
Verdes. Yeah. So you just brought up about a decision, and we have these questions here, so I want to ask the fourth question. Just describe a scenario for you. City Council has a decision to be made. The situation is not popular with a number of citizens. This is a tough decision, one requiring a great deal of research and investigation. As an official of the City of La Center, you represent the citizens as well as the health of the community long-term. How would you arrive at your decision? What position would you take?
Randy, that's a good question. I think one of the things that as a council member, is that the fact that we have to do some independent researching ourselves to find out, make sure we understand the real facts, what's going on. A lot of people have some agendas that within cities and small communities. So trying to ferre those out and really try to get down to exactly what is the real issue. I realize that making decisions on behalf of the city is important because that's what we're asked to do. But I think also part of that is interaction within the council itself, and I've seen that work here, where there's things come up where you'll have a discussion about things, and we'll get various inputs from each of the council members based on their experience and what they're hearing out there. But I think when it comes down to making a decision, I think the responsibility of the council member is really to put on a hat that says what is best for the city, recognizing that may in fact not sit well with a few within the city that might be campaigning against a particular issue or a particular problem or change or whatever. But I think the key is to be sure that when all's said and done, that we as a council, you as a council, make a decision on behalf of the city, pretty much a unanimous decision, come to a unanimous decision where we pretty much all can live with that decision.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Servin.
Why did you feel it was important to apply for the vacant city council position, and what are your concerns and issues?
I think best way to say that is, after spending 7 years on the planning commission, I've enjoyed that. It's been a real task, and we've had our work cut out for us the last couple of years. You all know that. We had a couple of years where there weren't things called monthly meetings. We were having sometimes 4 or 5 at least meetings a month to get things taken care of that the council, charged us to take care of and do. But one of the things that I've enjoyed is the fact that I think that we as a city have a great, the way we are organized with the council and the mayor. I would like the opportunity to be a part of this, and I thought this is the next step for me, particularly when there's an opportunity to step in and fulfill a position for this coming year. I'm one who wants to be a part of the community, and I would like to be the eyes and ears and be a voice on the council for the community. I think all of us bring something different, a different perspective. And I would hope that I would maybe be one that would bring a different perspective than anyone else here on the council. And that could be good or bad, but I think in generally, when we have some opportunity, we can share with each other. We all kind of bring some strengths and weaknesses to the job. And I think there's some things that I could bring to help overall. our council.
And I have a follow-up question to that piece is, what do you believe are the city's top issues right now?
I think one of our top issues is to increase our revenue. How we're going about that, what are we doing to bring in additional income, resources, getting construction continuing. We recognize that the housing is going on, and that's bringing a small amount of income, but not significant. So I think one of the things that I see as a challenge for our city and our council is to try to continue to be focused on bringing business into our city, be it at the Timmon Road location or at the junction or even downtown. Filling vacant buildings, and we've got a couple of significant buildings in town, working to get those buildings filled with businesses, employees that would start generating income for us, and we have tax and so on. But I think for the most part, a lot of our community is not aware of the real detail of our financial situation here. And I don't think that that's to me, to some level, is okay, because the city council are challenged and instructed to be in charge and to keep us afloat. And I would like to continue to be a part of, making us make sure that dream comes true, that we in fact get the finances coming in and get our budget numbers back up.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What is your position regarding the current City of Lucinder's moratorium on the sale and cultivation of recreational marijuana within the city limits?
My position?
Yes, would you like me to read that, I can repeat it for you if you'd like? What is your position regarding the current City of Lucinder's moratorium on the sale and cultivation of recreational marijuana within the city limits?
I certainly support that. I've known others. I have my daughter-in-law's father was a county commissioner, and now running for the state senate in northern Washington, and he had to deal with the whole area of marijuana, not only sale, manufacturing, and he was able to share there were horror stories to me on what goes along with all of that type of activity. So I think that the city council made a great decision, and I support their position on keeping it as you have put into policy.
Good, thank you.
Another two-part. What is your position regarding growth in La Center as well as economic development at the junction?
Well, we're seeing the growth, and I think the growth is good. It obviously continues to bring challenges. It's going to continue to bring challenges to the police department and our public works and our parks and the infrastructure regarding, we talked about sewers, we talked about the storm drain, all those kind of things. I believe that growth is inevitable, but I think that we have tried to, within the city, to try to manage that on how we allow, the type of housing we allow. And I think at this point, it's under control. We have schools that are going to be still kind of breaking the walls out in order to put all the students in. But I think that growth is important to our city internally here. And I think your other part there, John, was regards to the junction. The junction, I think is significant because I really believe that once we get a developer identified and get him on board, the first property or two that goes up in the junction, I really believe is going to be a trigger for future. And I don't think it's going to be someone coming in and then a long term. I really think as soon as someone starts to see something being developed, that there others are going to jump on the bandwagon. And I think that we should, as a city, continue to try to reach out to as much as we can based on the resources we have within the city to try to lure and encourage developers to come in and look at the junction, look at the opportunities that are there to put a business in. You talked about a hotel. I think that would be a wonderful thing to have starting up there. That would bring in some revenue. But I think as soon as someone puts that first shovel in and we start getting the first piece of property, either commercial, industrial, in place and operational, I really believe that's going to cause us to have the beginning of a long-term growth at the junction, which in turn would bring us the revenue that we need to sustain our city and to grow our city and maintain our city at the level that we are all accustomed to. We're very fortunate and have been for a number of years. A lot more people have been around here a lot longer than I have, but I can also sense that we are very fortunate to have the city that we have here. Even though it's small, it's a powerful city, a very productive city, great staff, we couldn't ask more for our staff. They do more than probably double the staff of other cities as far as what they do and accomplish. Does that answer for you, Johnny?
Yeah, and to follow up, how do you envision the city of La Center in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, I envision that the city of La Center is going to continue as we move forward to grow and going to incorporate our growth areas. I think there'll be a lot of additional property owners who are going to want to be annexed into the city, particularly heading southwest from here up towards Woodland. A lot of land out there. I really believe that we're going to see that happening. There are going to be more and more people wanting to come into the center. I also believe that as we move east, beyond the new grade school that's going to be developed and built here in the next year off of 4th Ave, 4th Street, that area beyond that, on both sides of 4th Street there, great opportunities for future development. And I think that we'll continue to grow. I see that we're going to need additional schools to accommodate the number of children. But I'm also looking for the fact that at some point downstream, we're going to have at the junction half a dozen different restaurants that we in the community can enjoy and not have to drive down to Portland or Vancouver to enjoy, but have some local fare right here in our local neighborhood. And also, I'm a real strong believer. I've seen what was been the concept of Timmon Road on both sides, and the east and west side of Timmon Road. The opportunities there for growth and small businesses intertwined with residential. I think it's a great opportunity. I'd love to see that just spurred up there. That would be great for our city to see that happen.
Very good. Okay. Well, thank you very much for those answers. Appreciate it.
Send in whom?
If you would please send in Mr. Santoro, Michael.
Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you. So just real quick, Michael, what I'm going to do is We have 4 questions here that the council's going to ask you. Each council member will ask you 1 question. And before we go through that process, I'm just going to ask you to, in about 3 to 5 minutes, share with us your background, how long you've lived in La Center, and the skills and experience relating to city council position that you would bring to the council.
It's a pleasure to address the council. You're looking at my piece of paper, so you all know I'm Michael Santoro. I've lived in La Center. We've been a resident since, for 15 years, since '96, Clark County. I've been a property owner and a resident of La Center since 2011. I've been part of La Center and La Center's culture since 2002. I began working, I was asked by a friend after I had retired to come and help with the New Phoenix and the Last Frontier. I was the casino manager from 2005 until I retired in 2013. So I'm a vet. I'm college educated. I studied political science, journalism, economics, to pick up a little business because I got a little tired of, I spent a summer internship in the state senate of state legislature in Illinois. And I got a little turned off, a little bit about politics at that time. That was back in 68, between 68 and 69.
Doesn't matter what year.
But I got a little turned off about politics at that time when I found out exactly what at that level that you had to do. There was too much of what's going on right now where even though you represented people, you didn't really represent people. It was what was done back and forth between the legislatures, between you do this for me and now I owe you this, and you vote here, and you didn't really represent your constituents. But it's always been a dream of mine. I wanted to be, when I grew up, when I spent time in college, I wanted to be a U.S. Senator. I really did. That was my goal. Go to law school, finish law school, and become a U.S. Senator. Didn't work out that way. Life doesn't always. But it didn't work out that way. As a casino manager, this city, even though a lot of people don't want to admit it, is kind of tied to the gambling industry. They were tied to the card rooms. I think it started out in 1985 when the City of La Center decided they were the first Clark County city to legalize gambling back in '85. Helped the city. The city was going bankrupt at that time. I kind of looked into the history of the center. I kind of love the way it's gone. The card rooms brought it out. Initially, I think there was maybe 300-400 people in La Center at the time in '85. By 2002, I think they were up to 2,500 people. Somewhere in the mid-'90s, the Southview Estates up there, Heights, was built. The city really began to expand. I think the gaming revenues at that time in the city were $3 million plus. The city was built up on the gaming and the revenue. A little different now. Half of what's there, I think we're down and budgeted now for about 1.5 million in gaming revenue next time. So we had to make that up someplace after the drivers come in. That's gone away from our coffers. I think my knowledge with the gaming industry and the fact that we're tied to the gaming industry in the city would be a big benefit to the council. I understand management. I understand the market. I understand that I had to study the market. I know the market that comes in here. We were talking earlier about the traffic problem and stuff across the bridge and all that. Whatever is done to help that traffic, is going to be a big benefit to the city of La Center. The people need to get across from the market that's drawn to bring the people in to our community, to the casino now that we have ties with. I mean, the city is tied to it whether we like it or not, and it can't change. I mean, we got really tied to it, and it caused some problems as we look at it and look at how we're having to figure out a way to balance the budget. I feel that,
So, Michael, we're going to go ahead and get started on the questions too, because,
Okay, yeah.
because we still got to get through those, and I think you're addressing some of those as you go through your commentary here.
Okay.
So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Let me start, okay, I'll pick another question this time. Thanks for coming in, thanks for applying.
you're welcome.
What is your position regarding the current City of La Center's moratorium on the sale and cultivation of recreational marijuana within the city limits?
Personally and morally, I do not think that the sale in the city of marijuana would be good for the city. It is a tax revenue, and I know we're looking for as a tax base. I am not, I look at what, I did drug counseling when I was in college. I was exposed to drugs myself in college. I was not a user, but I was exposed to it in the 60s. Pretty much everybody that was in college at that time was. I did counseling when I was in the service in Germany for drugs. So I don't know if I totally answered your question. I would not like to see it in La Center. I think it's close enough to us that it could be benefits. I do see the benefit in a tax mode to us.
Thank you.
So I don't get everybody confused, I'll stick with my question. Why do you feel it was important for you to apply for the vacant city council position now?
Now, I'm retired now, my wife is retired, so I can totally devote time period. The last time that city council was up to be able to run, my wife was still working, and I felt that there was a conflict of interest because my wife also worked for the New Phoenix and the Last Frontier. And so I thought it would have been a conflict of interest for me to do that. So I waited, and this is the first opportunity that has come up to be able to come back into something that I've wanted to do for quite a while.
And the follow-up question to that is, what are your concerns and issues with the city right now? Some of them you kind of alluded to,
Well, the
but
biggest
just the
cons-
top three.
Excuse me. The biggest concern, I think, is we've got to figure out a way to balance our budget. And I know we've talked about our growth, our urban growth, and that kind of thing. Those are strategic plans. Those are long-term. I think we have to look at something short-term. So I do totally understand Randy's question about the marijuana, because I know that could be a benefit and a boon to help us with our budgets. I personally wouldn't choose that as a way to go. But I think balancing the budget, finding out some ways to drive the revenue, I think trying to get a way to be able to work, understanding that we are a part, and it's always going to be a part of us, the gambling that's here, the card rooms that are in town, the card rooms that are here, being able to partner better, being able to look for ways to drive that business into the card rooms. Not only did we lose the revenue from the card rooms, we lost the revenue from the two restaurants that are gone. The one that was at Chips and the one that was at the Last Frontier, that's a bar and a restaurant in each of those. So besides the, I don't know, $1.5 million in revenue that's gone away, we also lost that revenue that's, I don't even know how much that is. I'm sure you guys know, you look at the budget. But we lost that revenue too. So we got to find some ways to drive some of the businesses into the core of the city and to get some more people to come down to the city. And we have to look for ways to be able to partner with both the partners of the tribe and with the card rooms in town. And we have to figure out some ways to, I think, to work together with both the tribe and the quadrooms to be able to make that happen.
Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Doug?
Good evening. Okay, envision this scenario. The city council decision must be made. The situation is not popular with a number of citizens. This is a tough decision, one requiring a great deal of research and investigation. As an official of the city of the center, you represent the citizens as well as the health of the community long-term. How would you arrive at your decision, and what position would you take?
First and foremost, I think it's the job of city councilman or city council person to represent the citizens, not their own personal views and not what I believe my political affiliations. I think you have to be able to represent each and every citizen in our community. And I would make the decision based upon, after analyzing all of the data, in conjunction with each and every member of the council, because a council person, a council member is not in themselves the legislator, they are part of a team. And they work as a team to support the city and what the city and the citizens want. So I would make it based upon the decision and the combined decisions of the council members for the best that we can do for all the citizens themselves.
Okay, thank you.
What is your position regarding growth in La Center as well as economic development at the junction?
I think the growth needs to be managed. I think most of the people in this room moved to the center not to be next to a Walmart, a Costco, a bowling alley, a movie theater, a automobile dealership. I think we moved to the center for the ambiance, the atmosphere, and the small town feeling of La Center. If La Center turned into a 60,000 populated city, I don't think I'd be part of the city anymore. I think I would move. I moved here for a specific reason, and I think most of us moved from the city to come to La Center. So I think we need to manage growth. I think the growth at the junction is good. I think that growth needs to be managed with a good long-term plan. I think that planning needs to be done with the wishes of the city. I think the town councils that we run now, having the city members come in and be able to talk at a meeting like tonight, voice the opinion of what's going on with the pipeline and that kind of stuff, is a way to manage the growth. I think it's important. I think it's key. I applaud you, Mr. Mayor, and the council for having the town meetings and to having the open discussions here. I think it's key. It's important. It's the only way. If you don't listen to the citizens, you don't know what they want.
And how do you envision La Center in the next 10 to 20 years?
A place I still want to retire. It's a place I still want to be. So it will grow. It is growing. There's nothing I can do to change it. I don't know that I would want to change the growth. I just think the growth needs to be smart. I think we need to keep the city core what it is. I think we need to look as we move and branch out. I think we need to make sure that the developers are managed, that we look for the right properties, look for the right way to have it done. And from what I see, it's one of the reasons I moved to the center. We've done a decent job. It's just that we're at a critical time now as we look to try to be able to keep our budgets balanced and keep the money to be able to provide the services that we've enjoyed for such a long time, and not lose the services and have that. But I envision us growing. I don't know whether we'll grow. I looked at, as we looked at how it went from 50%, 100%, you look at what's going on here, it'll all help, but we're looking down the road to get the revenue back. I think we need something sooner, quicker. And what that is exactly, I wish I had the answer, and I'm sure each and every one of you wish you had the same answer, how that would happen. But I think as a team and working together and working with the city, responsible citizens, there's a lot of smart people in the city. They can help, seek out those people, use the resources we have to make us a better city.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that'll conclude the questioning then. Michael?
You want me to send Tom in?
Would you please? Yeah, and then we'll get through that.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
You want us to hang around?
Yeah, please do. We'll come back into session here right after this next interview.
All right, here we go. Oh, sorry. Kind of get my second win here.
Oh, very good. Just real quick, I'll go through with you what basically the process is going to be. So we have 4 questions that are going to be asked of you. Each one of the council members will ask you a question. And then, but before we start, I'd just like to allow you 3 to 5 minutes to share with us your background, how long you've lived in the center, and the skills and experience relating to the city position that you bring to the city with you.
So as you know, my name is Tom Sterling. I currently own an IT company. Actually, my wife and I do, in Vancouver here. It actually started out in my garage here off of Hyden Circle. And it's grown to 13 full-time employees, and then I've got 6 contractors. So there's a lot of passion that comes with everything I do. Coming from a small little outfit into a bigger operation has been, it's not had, it's always had some struggles with it. But while the growth of the company has gone on, I just keep persevering and pushing forward with it. I've caught the attention of some of our community citizens with like Clark College and such, so I'm really a huge advocate with Clark College. I was asked to be on the advisory board, and then that has transpired into me sponsoring a scholarship. So we're actually doing a scholarship for single parents. And at first it was for single mothers because of the way I was raised, right? And my wife kind of looked at me and said, "You can't do that. You got to include the guys too." And I was like, that's a good point. So she's kind of been my rock right beside me.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we can start the questioning. Again, each one of the council members will ask you a question, and we'll start with Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. Tom, thanks for applying and stepping up here. With all the applicants, I think it's great. So I'm going to pick a different question. That's your question. I'm going to take that.
I'm just trying to.
No, I want to ask this one. I'll ask the one I asked last time. Okay.
I'm flexible.
Yeah, well, I am too. What is your position regarding the current City of La Center's moratorium on the sale and cultivation of recreational marijuana within the city limits?
I am not for it.
Not
for it. I'm not for the sale of marijuana.
Okay.
I am not. And it's not that I'm against people that use it. What a person does in their private life, as long as it doesn't affect others, so be it. And as long as it's been recognized as legal, I'm okay with that. I really, one of the reasons we moved up here was because housing was so expensive in 2006 and 5 down in Vancouver. What we can get up here was so much better. Plus, we had to put up with all the police sirens and the thieves and such. I can remember watching somebody run down the middle of our road with a lawnmower at 3 in the morning. I worked for Panasonic, and I did graveyard for a while. So I'd get up, and there goes a guy running down the road with one. So I wanted to get away from that.
And I think those type of drugs are still kind of a gateway into that, but I really don't want to see that here. So when we moved out here, it was that small town feel, and I'd like to make it or keep it that way for as long as possible.
Great, thank you.
All right, to show my flexibility. My question is going to be, what is your position, Tom, regarding the growth in the center and economic development of the junction?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. We were actually out there discussing some of that. You know, when it came up with the sewer line, et cetera, I know a city has to grow in order to survive, especially this city with its dependence that was on the carbons at the time. So it has to happen in order to sustain livability here. You know, like that sewer line, my whole thought process was, you know, the tribe, you know, I'd like to know what their skin in the game, or what kind of skin in the game they had as far as that goes, because when the center grows, they're going to benefit from it. And there should be some sort of cost that goes off onto them as well. But I also believe that, you know, maybe the city comes up with something like the CREDC down in Vancouver, the Columbia River Economic Development Group, something along those lines that can attract smaller businesses to Vancouver, or to the center, away from Vancouver, Ridgefield, and those places. Because you know, the junction up there is going to grow regardless. But if you can give them some benefits to it, it might help it.
Okay, and the second part of that question is, how do you envision the city of the center in the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can see the junction being the focal point, but I'd like to keep down here, you know, alive still. You know, some of the ideas that I've presented to family and friends around here is, you know, we need a grocery store, you know, something with a small town feel, you know, like New Phoenix over here, maybe talking somebody into moving into that, or bringing McMinimum's into one of the establishments down here to help the growth and kind of keep the town centered a little bit. So, yeah, I'm a businessman. I think of about 1,000 different ideas, and I'm not afraid to try them. So, you know, like some of the things I've done in my own company is, how do we generate more revenue? Because I built a company that was all referral based. I've never advertised, I've never marketed. It's just been 100% word of mouth, you know, and I take pride in that. So, you know, I thought, okay, so how can we generate some more revenue without spending tons of money? So I hired a couple of girls and I said, hey, if you guys can bring in some new clients, you get some money out of that. You know, I threw those balls out there and see if any of them stuck, and they ended up all failing. So it didn't work. But then there's always that one idea that's still sitting there, and it's starting to work now. So I'm not afraid to try.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. The last time you and I spoke, Tom, we were on your front porch and you were asking me the questions. I get to turn the tables this time.
You do. Except I think I kept you for about an hour, right?
It seemed like that, yeah. No, we had a good conversation.
We did. It was real good. I always like to know who I'm going to vote for. You know?
Okay, this is, I'm going to describe a scenario.
Sure.
A city council decision must be made. The situation is not popular with a number of citizens. This is a tough decision, one requiring a great deal of research and investigation. As an official of the city of Le Center, you represent the citizens as well as the health of the community long-term. How would you arrive at your decision, and what position would you take?
It's funny you should ask that. I'm in a very tough position right now, and tomorrow morning I have to make a call that's not going to be popular with my staff, but it's something out of necessity to keep the job alive, basically. You know, how I arrived at that is I usually look at facts. I'm an IT guy, so we go systematically right down the line. You know, if you tell me something, that's why I like tonight when those guys were all up here asking questions about the pipeline. Nobody asked what the Calix were doing. You know, I like to start at the beginning and work my way down. But I've been faced with tough decisions for a very long time. When I used to work for Panasonic, at one point, my boss, not Rick over here, but the guy that was in between us, actually, I had to fire 22 people in 1 week. And that was brutal. I was not a popular person, but it was because the company needed it, and someone had to do it. I was also asked to help walk out when the plant closed in Vancouver to help people out. Because, you want to have sincerity when you do so, but you know what must be done, and you want to kind of get that across to them. Hey, this is not a popular decision, this isn't something that was taken lightly, but we've done our due diligence, and this is the conclusion that we've come to.
Okay, so apply that back to the city in this
Give me an
situation.
example of something of a tough decision in the city.
Well, I think the question pretty much addressed it. It's any issue, it could be any issue that what's best for the city long-term may not be what a lot of citizens want to see.
Sure. So you make that decision based on the knowledge of what's best for the city long-term.
Okay.
Regardless of the citizens are going to like it or not. You were elected to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
You don't want to go on for another 45?
Last
chance.
In 3 years when I come back.
Shepherd is out now.
Okay, Tom, last one. Why did you feel it was important to apply for the vacant city council position? And what are your concerns and issues?
So, I've been watching, like I said in my letter, from the side. Actually, I've seen Daniel when he didn't have as much gray hair, actually, when I used to come earlier in the time period. So I've been watching for a little while, and, there's some concerns here that I see. I see, I pay attention to the budgets. And there's some other little nuances that are dear to me in this city. You kind of said something close to it when you were talking about what a great community it was when you moved here with your wife, and we were talking about raising the fees for building a house. And it really makes you think, when you're sitting back there, some of the reasons I moved here was the Christmas celebrations, the Halloweens, the holidays, the atmosphere, the closeness of your neighbors, and I want to keep that, because I think that's something to be cherished in today's world. When you go to Vancouver, you don't get what you get in the center. You don't get that at all. In fact, you're just another number in Vancouver that gets lost, and your voice is never heard. In the center, the community comes up here and they stand up here and they get to voice it. You guys actually listen. Maybe not Doug while he's riding down.
I did hear that.
You take to heart what somebody's saying. 'Cause I watched it. I actually watched it with that gentleman that got up here and he was very upset that you guys are going to raise it and it was going to hurt his money. And you're like, wait a minute, this is a great community. That's the reason I'm doing this. I want to make sure. I'm an older dad. I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. I want to make sure they grow up in a great community and it stays that way. At least to achieve that same feel that it's been since I've lived here.
And to follow up, what do you believe are the city's top issues?
Finances, development, probably working with the tribe as close as possible to make things amicable and beneficial for both.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Very good. Okay, Tom, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Yeah, so we're going to ask everybody to come back in. Oh, excuse me, no, we're going to go other way. We're going to ask everybody to leave, kind of get ahead of the program, and we'll go into executive session. I would say probably by 9:15, we should be done the executive session. So everybody's back in. We'll continue. First of all, I want to thank all 3 candidates for applying for this position. I want to thank you for taking the time this evening and interviewing with the council. I really appreciate each of your efforts, and this is a tough one. So what we're going to do now is a little different than what I talked about earlier, is that rather than do a motion, what we will do, the council members will actually vote on a ballot here. We'll turn those ballots over to the city clerk. she will tally the ballots, and if we get a majority, then we will go that way. If for whatever reason we can't get to that, then we will do the process again. But, so what I'm going to do is ask the council members to vote for one of the candidates, put their name on the back of the ballot, so we have that, and then we will pass those on down to the city clerk. She'll tally them, and we'll go with it from there. Any questions? Okay.
Legibly?
And then Dan, if you would assist Danny in doing that, please.
Okay.
Was that?
Yeah. Either one.
Okay, so we have 3 for Tom Strobin and 1 for Dennis Hill.
So we have a winner.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Tobin, congratulations. All right. Again, I want to thank everybody for participating this evening. We really don't have paperwork this evening to actually do the oath of office, so I will be reaching out to you real soon for scheduling that. But we'll get that done. And then we will go forward.
So the
Again,
next meeting,
thank
you'll be
you,
sworn at
Dennis.
the next meeting?
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for staying and hanging in there with us tonight.
September 26th, that's my birthday.
September 26th, you're going to have to do it then, yeah, okay.
Do we have a budget meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. We have-
No, they adjourned.
Okay, so with that, that concludes this evening's meeting. That's all that's on the agenda. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
I didn't get an answer. Do we have a budget meeting tomorrow
Yes, we
night?
do.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, double check your,
No, it's on my phone. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
it's tomorrow.
it's real. I have real and imaginary meetings.
yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Dennis.
Oh, I have you.
Oh, thanks for being here. You came to review.
Don't you dare.
I know, we've missed you. You need to stop in.
Long meeting. I know. Long day.
He's off. He's